Hi there. It seems to me that it's peculiar that you'd have something perfect, which would then have something budding off from it and becoming or degrading into something dark and material and heavy and oppressive, but therein find something which restores the whole energy back to its source, as I might say. And this would be heaven, and this would be like the fall, something budding off and falling to create denser and denser worlds, wherein you would find the spark, which then uh, takes the consciousness back up to its source of perfection and non-duality. But but philosophically, I have a problem because I can't see how something. I mean, if you think this is like the golden temple, and there in the golden temple there is the basement which is full of darkness, and from that basement there emerges a creature that creates a sort of world in this basement part of the great golden palace. But there is in its midst, unbeknownst to it, a spark there which is always wanting to unite with what is upstairs. My problem is that I don't know why there would be a fall from perfection. I don't really see the genesis of this, really. I can't really. To me, this golden temple isn't really high enough, in inverted commas. It's not actually. It's still dualistic, even though it's a golden temple, and it's still partaking of dualism. So, to my mind, there is something even beyond the golden temple which experienced the fall. So there's something even beyond the beyond, as it were. And I suppose we get into Ein Sof and Ein Sofer, and we're talking about the three zeros. This will be kind of like zero, and then there's two zeros, and then there's three zeros, and then so there's something even beyond what might lie beyond the golden temple as well, with its blemish, because the golden temple has this blemish which causes the fall to happen. But then beyond that temple is something which created that temple with the blemish. So even that is not high enough, and still beyond that is something higher. But it's not actually beyond that. It's actually in a different sort of part of the universe altogether. So as I said, the two parallel lines is the best way to look at it, because the parallel one of these lines refers to the temple that created the temple which had the blemish, from which the fall happened, which created the dark basement world, from which the spark arose to go back to the golden temple again. There was something that created all this, but then there's something beyond that, which is on a different track altogether, which had nothing to do with the creation of anything. Um, and it kind of it exists, if such a word could be used. If something never came into being, it exists on an altogether different track than all this created stuff. Um, and all that. So the demiurge is very, to me, and I've already discussed this with the infinite demiurge and the infinite good God. There's something that very extremely powerful about the demiurge. I mean, not even as a usurper or a false god or a fake god or something, but a god that has authenticity and has the authentic power to create, preserve, and destroy, and to create dualism, as opposed to non-dualism, which is an altogether different a different track on a different track than the demiurge's track. Um, and I suppose one could say that this is the space-time track, and then above that track is beyond is spacelessness and timelessness, as well as non-duality. But the question, of course, then, because we've only this spark of light, which is in the basement of the Golden Temple, which then sought to go back upstairs. This is only like half the story, because in a way, the question is, how do you get from the demiurge track? How do you cross tracks, as it were? If you imagine two trains going along at two tracks, how would one cross between one track and the other? There seems there's not a sort of road in between them, not a path in between them that could take you from one track to the other. So, in some strange way, I think that the the spark that's in the basement of the Golden Temple, when that reaches back up to the Golden Temple again, it seems to me that this has a sort of sympathetic, magical role to play, in that as the spark of light is liberated from the basement and returns to the Golden Temple, which again has been created by the demiurge, then this is in microcosm, and in the macrocosm, a pathway is created between the demiurge track and the track of the good God. So you actually cross simultaneously, as a spark of light reunites with upstairs, with the temple upstairs. You move from one track to the other simultaneously. But the thing about this, what lies beyond the Golden Temple, is a very, very sort of rarefied place, which seems like it's non-dual, seems almost like it's beyond the space-time track dimension. It seems like a very high place to be, a very high heaven, as it were. But it isn't. It does come to a stop. You don't go beyond that unless you're going to cross the tracks, unless you're going to cross the space between the two lines, as it were. So the point about it is that the fall isn't the ultimate story. Because that's not the ultimate story. That's kind of a means to an end, or basically something which begins a process, and it's a process that's in microcosm, and is a reflection of the greater purpose, or the greater magic, if you like, of crossing between the two parallel lines that, of course, are never going to meet. You see, so it's not ever. There's going to be no resolution. And literally, you have to cross from one to the other, because there's no resolution possible between the two states, between duality and non-duality. This is kind of a rather, again, another work in progress, another thought experiment that I'm undertaking here. And it seems to be a lot of the Gnostic Gospels, will take you as far as you can. To the kind of temple which built the Golden Temple, which had the glitch in it, or the blemish in it, or the dark basement in which there lurked a creature that created a dark world within that Golden Temple. But I mean, the scriptures will take you so far, but they won't take you any further, which perhaps is why, really, ultimately, you have to go within and find your own language, because this language is what really unites the spark that's within you, with the Golden Temple initially, but which in fact accomplishes a greater attainment, which is to take your consciousness literally from one line to the other line of two lines that never meet, because they're parallel. So this is kind of like my, as I say, a kind of a work in progress, really. It involves a sort of sympathetic magic. It involves a liberation that happens at one level, uh, but at the same time, another liberation happens at another level, which is much higher than the first. And of course, we do have to use lower and higher, I think, uh, as in climbing a ladder. You know, I mean, ladders aren't things which don't have a high and a low place on them, really. If you know what I mean, you're either going up the ladder, you're either high on the ladder, or you're low on the ladder. So I mean, I don't, one wants to be egalitarian about it and politically correct, but I think there is going to be a discussion of higher and lower, simply for the purposes of convenience, purposes of being able to visualize it and grasp it, using the language of the lower worlds, in fact, which is always a problem. So what I'm saying is that enough, basically, of enough of scripture, enough of writing. One really has to go into oneself, introspect, and come up with a language which is itself transcendent, a transcendent of the language that I am using, that anybody else has ever used about Gnosticism. And it's the experiential dimension of Gnosticism, which is much more powerful than the actual scriptural dimension of Gnosticism. In fact, even to go so far as Gnosticism is not a religion of the book, although I have talked about the need for canonicity in Gnosticism, and even a charisma of Gnosticism. Ultimately, it goes beyond that, because everybody's Gnostic, everybody's gnosis is different. So you could have your canon and you could have your charisma, but people would dispute it, and people would say, "Well, I've transcended your canon and transcended your charisma a long time ago in my own mind. The fact that I can't express it to you, or inadequately express it to you, is neither here nor there." And then you have to concede that point. You have to say to people, "Yes, I understand that your personal gnosis out trumps my interpretation of scripture, or my canonicity, or my charisma formation." You see. So anyway, I hope that I've shown that that there's more to this. There are secrets within secrets in Gnosticism, which I suppose ultimately only you as a Gnostic can fathom.